Thank you all for being here this morning for MAREE to make our public statement about the budget that the governor presented. I think it was like a week or so ago. So I just want to thank you all for being here. Marilyn, and I'm Charlamagne. I am the chairperson for MAREE this year. I'm also an educator and I'm also an abolitionist. I want to say that Maryland has long prided itself on its education system. A deeper look at the data, however, shows that statewide averages mask deep inequities and opportunity for certain groups of students. These gaps in opportunity lead to gaps in achievement between Black and Brown students and white students as well. And white students, as well as between low-income students and higher-income students. What is more, racial inequities persist among students of similar family income levels. To be clear, these disparities are a reflection of how we organize our schools and shortchange certain students when it comes to critical educational opportunities, resources from early childhood through high school. MAREE works to eliminate policies and practices that are rooted in structural and systemic racism targeting Black and Brown people. Districts that educate Black and Brown students are historically underfunded and expected to do more with less. The governor's budget omission of significant funding, $140 million, specifically intended for Baltimore City and Prince George's County, counties that have the largest population of Black and Brown students. This omission is steeped in racial inequity. Baltimore City, respectfully, $99 million, and Prince George's County, $26.5 million. And this cut is a cut to the education effort money. And Frank Patinella will talk about that in his presentation. Absolutely, this cannot stand. We must demand that this money be put back into the budget by presenting a supplemental budget. Additionally, another $14.2 million for the implementation of the blueprint was cut. $700,000 from behavioral health training. And this, in the light of this pandemic, this money is needed more than ever for the mental health services that our families need. $1 million cut in national board certification. This is something that MAREE spoke out about because we know that this will impact our Black and Brown educators who will need additional supports to reach national board certification. $1.3 million cut in the expert review teams. These teams are run by MSDE, and these will be people who will observe in our schools the implementation of the blueprint. Another cut of $800,000 in career and technical education. That whole amount was cut, $800,000, an entire $500,000 for college and career readiness. Again, this cannot stand. The governor and the Maryland General Assembly have a responsibility to the students of Maryland to pass a supplemental budget in the amount of $140 million as dictated by the blueprint law. There has been numerous delays in getting the blueprint on track, and with a $4.6 million surplus, there is no reason the state cannot invest in our children, invest in children who are most vulnerable and need this funding immediately. Thank you. I will turn to Frank from the ACLU.
Hi, my name is Frank Patinella. I'm a senior education advocate with the ACLU of Maryland. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of this new blueprint funding formula and why the omission of $140 million in the fiscal 23 budget is inequitable and devastating to schools and students in Baltimore City and Prince George's County. First, I want to provide some important context regarding education funding among the 24 public school districts in Maryland and how the playing field is completely unlevel. This chart is a snapshot in time showing fiscal year 2017 funding data for all school districts. The middle horizontal line represents a level playing field. It represents the funding adequacy targets for each school district. And these targets were set by the state itself in the Thornton Education Funding Law passed in 2002, after the judge agreed with the plaintiff's claim that adequate funding is mandated in Maryland's Constitution and that the state was grossly underfunding Baltimore schools. This ruling came in the year 2000 under the lawsuit Bradford versus the State Board of Education. There's a lot of information on this on the ACLU website. Let's look at the bars in the chart. The bars show how far away and in a few cases how far above each district is from what the state established as the funding adequacy target for each district. At the bottom, the districts are lined up according to wealth. At the far left, you see Caroline County, which is the district of lowest wealth. And as we move to the right, the counties get wealthier, with Worcester County being the wealthiest. You can see that generally districts on the left are more underfunded, and the funding situation improves as you move to the right. There are some outliers here, with some of the wealthier counties being underfunded as well, but also some of them having more funding than what the state determined to be adequate. Baltimore and Prince George's County are the most underfunded districts in the state, and the rural districts of low wealth are also standing in deep holes. And it's important to note that this is fiscal 17 data. We are heading into fiscal 23, and we know based on the trend that this deficit only grows each year. Further, these adequacy funding targets were based on education standards that were adopted way back in 2002. New standards, including Common Core and the new blueprint metrics, are now in play. So these adequacy targets are obsolete. But it's important to get a sense of the playing field as the Governor and General Assembly consider the budget and the phase-in of new blueprint dollars. Next slide, please. Here's a summary of the underfunded blueprint programs in the governor's fiscal 23 budget that Charlemar referenced. Let's first take a look at the education effort adjustment. When the blueprint law was first proposed, it did not include the education effort adjustment. This is funding that, the formula requires local jurisdictions and the state to share in the funding of education. The previous formula didn't require the local districts to contribute their share of these certain weight categories. That's compensatory education. So every student that qualifies for free and reduced meals, students of low income, English language learners, and special education. The new formula requires the local districts to pay their fair share of these weights. While we want the full amount for these weights in the formula, we believe that this placed the disequalizing and untenable burden on districts of low wealth due to the large percentages of students in these categories for these districts. So the education effort adjustment provides additional state funding to districts of low wealth that show an above average effort in terms of their local requirement. And that's needed in this formula, or the formula is completely inequitable. The categories on the left just summarizes what Charlemar went over in terms of all those blueprint categories that are not funded in the budget. There's been many delays since the Kerwin Commission began its work. It took 3 years for them to come up with their final report and the funding formula. The law was vetoed in 2020 and then overridden in 2021. The Accountability and Implementation Board of the Blueprint, which is responsible for overseeing the Blueprint implementation and providing guidance and developing implementation plans for the districts, haven't been completed yet. So this has been delayed a year after year after year, and we need to move forward. So thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Charlemar.
Yeah, me. Shalimar, you're on mute.
We are now going to hear from Jana Parker in PG County.
Hi, my name is Jana Parker, and I'm an advocate within Prince George's County. As a resident of Prince George's County and a graduate of our county school system and a former educator within the system, I am disturbed and angry at the deliberate decision of Governor Larry Hogan to remove necessary and vital funding from our school system. Larry Hogan, who is from Prince George's County and is thoroughly aware that our public school system has been underfunded for years, surely knew with a cost analysis that he did prior to making this decision, that his decision would greatly and negatively impact Prince George's County and Baltimore City, two areas whose districts both have over 80% of their districts being with Black and Brown students. Prince George's County students' percentages are over 60% Black and over 30% Latino. And our county has the second highest English language learner population in the state. Our school system needs every dollar to help support our students as well as our teachers. They are the most valued members of our community because it is through their dedication and shaping of young minds that creates the bedrock of our society and our community. This money can and will provide vital resources to our teachers to continue to ensure that they move forward with educating within our system. The state of Maryland has $1 billion surplus, and giving this money to Prince George's County as well as Baltimore City public school system hurts no one, but it helps everyone within our community. Slashing funding to Prince George's County public schools hurts our community because it hampers our ability to educate our children for our county's future workforce, which will also affect our economy for years to come. This money could also go to help so many different programs within our system, including our wonderful arts program that produces great artists in many different fields, our athletic program that continues to produce stellar athletes that go on to play in various professional leagues, our academic programs, which continue to produce worldwide scholars, as well as our CTE program, which continues to produce and support many of our students that go into the workforce in jobs that are critical to everyday functions within our community. In the past year, Governor Hogan has invested in building correctional facilities all throughout the state of Maryland, but now continues to opt to defund our public school systems, particularly and specifically school systems with the majority of Black and Brown students. This deliberate decision by Larry Hogan seems to be a specific attack on his own vulnerable constituents. I want to remind Governor Hogan that when he became governor, he took a charge to serve all the residents of Maryland, and that the residents of Prince George's County and Baltimore City are his constituents too. And taking money from the children's education is not serving the people of Prince George's County, Baltimore City, or this great state of Maryland. Voters in Prince George's County shouldn't forget Larry Hogan's deliberate decision to continue to underfund our school system, as well as take money from our schools that desperately need it. The grandstanding and hypocrisy of Governor Hogan to say that he wants more equity and representation on the AIB blueprint for education, while specifically denying funding to the two districts that have the greatest population of Black and Brown students, is appalling. It is imperative to the future of our students that this attack on the education of Black and Brown students be stopped and that our schools be fully funded. I encourage that Governor Hogan do the right thing and put the money back into our school systems and stop this attack on the education of Black and Brown students in Prince George's County and Baltimore City. Stop his attack on the education of his constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana Parker from PG County, and educator like myself. We now want to introduce Jamal Jones, who is the co-director of the Baltimore Algebra Project, representing for Baltimore City.
Good morning, everyone. Or at least we're trying to make it a good morning, right? If we can get this 140 million back, it'd be a great and fantastic morning. I'm just here to make sure that we can communicate the importance of this money. You can't do stuff without resource. You can't make stuff happen without resource. And that's part of why Baltimore City and other jurisdictions have varied results when it comes to anything, particularly education. Now, this 140, which really 99 million of it is for Baltimore City, actually is going to end up impacting the city in a lot more significant ways. That $99 million could pay for a lot of teachers. For example, the school district has full-time equivalents, or what they call FTE. And for one person, that's about $90,000 to $100,000. You think about that in context to 99 million, we're talking about a whole lot of full-time equivalents in terms of teachers, and that covers folks' salaries and their benefits, right? So there's a lot of folks whose jobs may be on the chopping block as a result of not being able to have this money. And then you think about the context of having paraeducators, which is another thing that in terms of what the 99 million and other funds can be used for productively and most usefully. Paraeducators to help add to the classroom environment. There's a lot of OST, meaning out of school time programming, that's probably going to end up cut or the first thing on the chopping block as a result. And these are all services, whether you're talking about the primary education in the classroom or the out of school time services, or even just the community services that are placed in and around the school, are all going to be impacted very greatly based on the withdrawal or that holding of that resource. So I need folks to be very clear. It's not a question of Baltimore City wants some innocuous 99 million. This is a question of having the operating cash to be able to deliver the educational product or good that we are trying to give to our students, and identifying that this 140 between PG and Baltimore City being taken away is going to disrupt whatever versions of productive education we're trying to create, and identifying and acknowledging the lack of equity in this decision, understanding that these are the two districts with the highest populations or densest populations of Black and Brown students. We need this money. That's just straight up. It's no way around it. And in reality, these types of games, this type of political game in the context of 2022, we're over post-pandemic, and we have Kerwin legislation that's passed. In reality, what's happening is the governor is doing a bunch of grandstanding and identifying Baltimore in the way that a lot of legislators, particularly the ones who are not from Baltimore, and saying that those funds coming to Baltimore would be a waste of money. There's a running joke in Annapolis that money that goes to Baltimore is money that goes to a black hole. And so I like to say, just A, this is not a black hole. B, we still need our money. And C, if we want to be able to give fair and equitable education to all of the kids in Maryland, including PG County, including Baltimore City, we need to be fair and equitable and continue to fund things at the level that they need to be. So with that said, MAREE's requesting that the $140 million be placed back into the budget so that we can keep pushing towards educational outcomes that make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for, those are all our presenters for this press conference. Josie?
If we can...
My deepest apologies. Eva Sumano from CASA will be speaking. Sorry, Eva.
No worries. Hi, I'm Eva Sumano. I'm the CASA's education manager, and I'm formerly an educator as well. So I just wanted to talk about how the blueprint is the law, not subjected to interpretation or manipulation, or to be chipped away at by adequately funding it, especially at a time of budget surplus. The blueprint is a mandate meant to be the starting point at which our state government begins to atone for and reverse the systematic oppression present in the education system that caused these disparities in educational outcomes we see in our community today. First, he vetoes it, then he delays Now he attacks this law that so many of our community have worked so hard for. Governor, we want you to know that we recognize this as an attack on our Black and Brown communities. Baltimore City and Prince George's County currently educate 44% of the Black students in the state, 33% of the Latinx students, 1/3 of the English language learners, and nearly a quarter of all students in the state of Maryland. The blueprint mandated for the creation of a work group on English language learners, and at the end of this year will provide their final report on recommendations to improve their educational journey. English language learners are already a vulnerable and underserved population, and the governor's unwillingness to allocate resources is only going to further widen the educational gap. We want you to know that we stand here united, representing our families, and we will fight to make the promise of the blueprint a reality for us all. You will not defeat us. Sí se puede. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you.